This is Chris Hughes with the Christian Perspective Podcast with Chris Hughes, where we encourage our listeners to engage the culture with Jesus Christ. Your Chosen Truth Network podcast is starting in just a few seconds, so enjoy it, share it, but most of all, thank you for listening to the Truth Podcast Network.
This is the Truth Network. Welcome to Truth Talk Live.
All right, let's talk.
The truth is, I can't hide it. I can't hold it no more.
A daily program powered by the Truth Network.
This is kind of a great thing, and I'll tell you why.
Where pop culture, current events, and theology all come together.
Speak
Your mind.
And now, here's today's Truth Talk Live host.
Robbie Dilmore here, your host today for Truth Talk Live, again powered by the Truth Network. And today's show, I'm going to tell you, is going to be off the hook. We're going to be talking about cell phones, Nick. And so naturally, as I told Carmen that joke that we're going to be off the hook, she said, Carmen's our program director, by the way, here. And she said, Robbie, that has a really good ring to it. So I'm really looking forward to your thoughts today. As you know, our vision for this show, Truth Talk Live, is that it would be a call-in show where you, the listeners, get to share the truth, right? Your stories, what you think about the cell phone situation, testimonies, even your prayer requests, right? And your views on current comments and pop culture, all that stuff. We want you to call us at 866-348-7884, 866-348-7884. And just to start out with, I want to give a shout out to Emmanuel, right? He's working at Subway. He saw me today and he said, "You're Robbie Dilmore with," you know, and I didn't even have my truth wear on or anything. And he said, "Man, I love Truth Talk Live." And then I got a call last night from another listener, Rachel, who was telling me how much she likes the new Truth Talk Live show. So I'm excited that you're excited and so glad that you tuned in today. And I can assure you, right, that this show really will be off the hook when you get to see what we're actually going to be talking about, because what we're talking about today is what is the solution to kids and their phones, or maybe worse, adults and their phones, right? And so, you know, we wanted you to call in, like, though we know the battle is not against flesh and iPhones, but it's against spiritual forces in high places, right? We need your ideas on what can we do to battle this. 866-348-7884, this number to call in and share, 866-34-TRUTH. And here to help us, and she really is a big help when it comes to these phone solutions, is Whitney Miller. You may recognize her voice from, she's often on Lantern Rescue with me, where they are dealing with human trafficking and those kind of things. And so just to you know, some of today's content, because of us talking about human trafficking, may not be all that appropriate for younger ears. I'll let you be the judge of that. But Whitney, great to have you on with us today. And seems like I only saw you yesterday.
yeah, no pun intended. No, good to chat with you, Robbie. I'm excited to just listen into the listeners and some of their perspectives. I think that's going to be really a neat dynamic to this conversation, and inviting them into this place where we can have these open conversations with the understanding and recognition, much like you just said, that this is a battle against spiritual, you know, pieces, not flesh and blood. And so even when it comes to something as simple as our technology and our devices, there is still a battle out there. So I'm excited for what this is going to hold.
Right. And so the neat thing about Whitney, and I know a little bit about her background, besides the fact that she's obviously with Lantern Rescue and working hard to fight human trafficking every day, she was part of the school system, and she also is a mom. And so you see this from all sorts of different angles, don't you, Whitney, when it comes to these phones, like ways that we would never see it if that really you didn't bring it to our attention.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Robbie. I do think it has allowed me many different perspectives. I did teach in the public school system in high school for 7 years, and did a little bit of substitute teaching prior to that in middle school. So I really kind of got to see the full gambit of what our kids are dealing with on the front lines. And on the front lines of that is their technology, you know, are their devices. And it's a different fight than I think we realize as parents. So I do hope that in this conversation that we are able to bring some things to light for parents that maybe they're naive to. I don't think it's a desire to not know what our kids are exposed to. I think it's just we don't know what we don't know, so.
I do. And so there are those hard questions like, and we want you to call in and tell us what you think. Some people think, well, we just don't let them have cell phones. I mean, how easy is that? That has other implications that we're going to talk about. And, well, you might have all sorts of views on this subject, and we would love to hear yours, 866-348-7884. And before we get to the heavy stuff, we always got to do the light stuff. So, we got to do our Dad Joke Digest, just saying, Nick. So talking about cell phones here we go. And now time for Dillmore's Dad Joke Digest. Your opportunity to call in and share the joke you always wanted me to hear. Call now, 866-348-7884 with your dad joke, 866-348-7884. Call now. All right, Nick, you're going to love this one. So, and Whitney, if you know it, be sure and answer it. So, do you know what happens to an iPhone when you drop it in the toilet? Have you thought about that, Nick? it starts sinking. It'll come to you. All right, think about it. It starts sinking. When I asked my phone, Siri, why am I so bad with women? And you know what she said, Nick? She said, I'm Alexa, you moron. And let me just say this to whoever lost an iPhone 15 Pro Max. It was in blue titanium outside the radio station yesterday. Can you please stop calling my new iPhone? Actually, Nick, if you saw me take that, you'd be an eyewitness.
Oh, man.
Yeah, okay. So my 7-year-old nephew showed me with pride the telephone he had just made from a string and 2 tin cans. I pulled out my iPhone and said, that's nice, but look what the kids in your age in China made.
Oh, my God.
There's some truth to that, I think.
Yeah, that one's bad on all sorts of levels, especially when it comes to human trafficking. It's just, yeah. So my personal favorite on the list, I always save for last before I actually get to the one you can call in and win with. So, and you're going to like this one, Nick. I know you will because you like a good one. And this one is, do you know why dogs, we're going to have to answer this on the other side of the break. You can be thinking about it through the break, is why dogs usually don't answer the phone. I know you've wondered that for a long time. Why dogs usually don't answer the phone. When we come back, you call us 866-34-TRUTH.
This is the Truth Network.
Well, welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today we're talking about what's the solution to kids and their phones, or maybe worse, adults and their phones. Like all the screen time, people looking at their phones. You go to a restaurant, man, and it just makes you want to cry when you see a whole family. Nobody's talking to each other. Everybody's looking at their phones, waiting on whatever, and looking aggravated. It's just rampant. But there's all sorts of other bad fruit that lead to human trafficking and all those kind of things. And so we are, wanting to talk about this today on Truth Talk Live. In order to have that discussion, though, you got to call us at 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH. And when we left our hero, the dog, we were doing a few of Robbie's jokes. What can I say before we get to the good stuff? So the question was before the break, why dogs usually don't answer the phone. You had the whole break to Google it and everything. Nick, if you come up with something. It looks like he might.
I'm still trying to think of it. I didn't have a chance. I'm being honest.
You were busy. I'm glad. How about Whitney? Did you think about it?
Nothing. I was trying to come up with something clever, but the dad joke portion of this, you really never know what you're going to get.
Right.
Well, here you go. no caller ID.
Oh,
Oh, good.
that was good.
If they had caller IDs, they'd be answering it. But as it is, they're struggling. So we're to the point where, like, if you can call and answer this riddle, you can win. So, though the cell phone is not found in the Old Testament, it's not in the New Testament either, but it's certainly not in the Old Testament. Which book in the Bible contains this verse? I made a covenant with my iPhone not to look lustfully at a young woman. I made a covenant, actually, with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. And if you can tell us what book of the Bible you find that particular verse, Nick, tell them what they'll win.
Yes, absolutely. You'll be winning a prize from our Truth Talk prize vault today. And yes, just call our number. That is at 866-348-7882.
84, right?
4, yes.
It's and by the way, that was to Tell the Truth music. We came up just for that. So all you got to do is tell us which book in the Bible contains the verse, I made a covenant with my iPhone. A good idea, by the way, not to look lustfully at a young woman. You've probably never heard it interpreted that way, Whitney. That's the RSV, the Robbie standard version. But anyway, I know that wow, for some folks, they just think, well, I'll just take these phones away from my kids and the problem solved. That isn't problem solved, is it?
No, it's not, unfortunately, Robbie. If only it was that easy, right? But it doesn't solve, and it's not a solution. I think a better solution is to prepare our children for making sound and right and godly decisions with their devices, and that starts with building a relationship with your children that is rooted in knowing the Lord, and that sovereignty of the Lord and respect for the Lord. And it sounds like, how do those two things go together, right? How do they go together? Well, our kids are going to gain access. Taking away a technology device does not limit their access to them. I can't tell you how many times sitting in a high school classroom, I would watch another kid pass their phone off to another kid who would then sign into their Instagram account that mom and dad were not aware of. So they're going to find access to it. It's preparing them for making sound decisions when they do have access.
Oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, right, we it's crazy. Like some of the things we've talked about on Lantern Rescue, on the way that even young boys can get hooked into crazy stuff, and the next thing you know, extorted for all sorts of crazy more stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And this is, adults can attest to this too. It is much easier to hide things nowadays than what it used to be. And technology has been such an important piece of that, it's played a big role in our ability to hide our sinful ways. And our kids are not oblivious to that. They also know they can hide behind things in their phones. So they believe that they are able to search up and find things and connect with people and be able to hide that from mom and dad, and the scary part is that there are bad people out there that are also aware and grooming our children to hide things from mom and dad. That's unfortunately a part of what this looks like. And so that's why I think and fully believe that preparing our children is so important. Having open, honest conversations with our children is so important. Just statistically, I think this is an interesting fact, Robbie, but I'm reading through some stats as we're sitting here chatting, and these are from, just recent stats of this year. And it says over 3.8 million kids under 5 and over 21 million kids between 5 and 14 years old have a smartphone. That's scary. I mean, that is, if you pair that statistic with the idea that if we are looking at the web, World Wide Web across the board, right, and we were to line up every internet website, 1 in 4 of them would be pornographic. 1 in 4 of them.
Are you serious?
And our 5-year-old has access to a smartphone. That's concerning. They don't even have to search it, right? They could easily stumble upon it. And I've said it before, but consider it like you're putting 4 magazines out on your kitchen table every morning, and you're just praying that your kid doesn't pick up the wrong one, because 1 in 4 of those are not going to be good for them. You know, that's the bets that we're putting out there. That's how we're hedging our bets for our children when we hand them a device. That's an eye opener, you know. And I think that's something we have to consider. And
well, here's something else. Happened actually over Christmas for me. I was having a discussion with my 2 daughters, and they were teasing their father. Both my daughters are married now, and we have a chance to see how we did parenting. and they were, saying, Dad, what was up with the whole idea of not letting us watch Harry Potter, right? And so, like perhaps a lot of Christian parents of my era, I just thought it was evil. I didn't want them to watch it. And so I just forbid it. Like, you're just not going to watch Harry Potter. You're not going to go see Harry Potter or whatever. And so I threw that rule out there, like, you're just not going to have an iPhone. Little would I know the guilt trip that led to in both my daughters. They both commented on about how they ended up having to hide the fact that they'd gone to see Harry Potter. In other words, I didn't stop them from seeing Harry Potter and of course, they're trying to see at this point in time, but especially my youngest daughter, I could see how, she said it was one of the most things I felt the guiltiest over that I ever did in my early teenage years was I went to see Harry Potter and I never told my dad. And I hadn't even thought about, you forbid them to do whatever. And part of it is if you put them in a position where they got to hide it, and that is, it just makes it tricky, but you could see, clearly the effect of what you thought. And they were like, why did you do that, Dad? I said, well, it's just to begin with, I love you. And I didn't want you, to get something that might, take away some amount of your purity. So, we got so much to talk about here, but we need your calls. 866-348-7884. We'll be right back.
This is the Truth Network.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. Today's show, we talked about at the beginning, is Off the Hook. We're talking about cell phones and, how do we deal with this issue with, screen time and all these things that people are talking about with our kids, but even as adults, So I've got a few quotables here that we're going to quote before Whitney and I continue. Whitney with Land and Rescue is our guest today, and we got a lot of interesting stuff to tell you about Land and Rescue coming up as well. But I want to get to these quotables because I love these quotes right along the lines of what Whitney's been talking about. So listen to what Elaine Taylor says. She's a doctor, and she said, part of what happens is instead of looking at technology as a tool and a valuable thing, it ends up being a toy that our kids have permission or not to use, and that ends up putting us in the position of being the bad guy. Which, as I just described that discussion with my daughter, I ended up being the bad guy, and because I loved him, and so we got to rethink some of this maybe. And Clive James said it's only when it is only when they go wrong that machines remind us how powerful they are. And boy, can they, right? And John F. Kennedy, you're like this. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And of course, my last quote is actually from somebody quite close to me, Tammy Dillmore. Here's a quote from my wife. Do you mind if I tape your phone to my forehead so I can at least pretend you're looking at me when I speak? There you go. And believe me, nothing infuriates my wife worse than, like, are you going to listen to me or are you going to look at your phone? Like, man, I wish I could figure out how to stop that, Whitney, got any ideas?
Yeah. Oh, it's funny, Robbie. I love that we're having this conversation because over Christmas, my husband and I had a very similar conversation, and we were recapping the year and, discussing some of our successes and some of our failures. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest ones that we came to was how we have failed our children this year. And so much of that was how much time we have stolen from them because our outlet, our calm down from the day, our escape has been scrolling on our cell phone. And it hit us like a brick wall.
Wow.
And it's great to have that hit you, but now what, right? Like, I'm always about action. Like, the Lord reveals a lot of incredible things to us, but I don't want to waste his time revealing it to me and then not act upon it, you know? And so that was one of those revelations that kind of set us back a minute and opened up a whole nother conversation. And it was two parts, really, two pieces of this that kind of struck us. Was one, what are we going to do about it? So our new rule, and maybe someone listening will adopt this as well, and I hope that it is changing the impact in your home, is that we would put a charging station at the front door, and we would turn our ringers up, because I'm the worst about keeping my phone on silent. From the day, you know, it just happens. But so we would turn our phones up and the ringers up so that if someone needed us, that we were accessible. But the only time we would go to our phones is if it was ringing and someone was calling us. And we are day 2 into that. So,
yeah, well, you know, and the thing that just jumps all over me, Whitney, as you say that, is that, wow, what am I modeling for my kids when they see, even if they're not talking to me, even if they're not trying to get my attention, what do they see me doing? And they're like, oh, that's what adults do. You know, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to scroll through my phone, right?
Yeah, that's what we do with our idle time, right? And here's the second thing that plays perfectly into is, you know, it's easy to make that our escape, you know. For growing up, it was not necessarily cell phones because they were not easily accessible in my youth. It would be finding a TV show that you just kind of binged watch, right? Or a channel that you just knew the next 5 things that came on you're going to want to watch. And now that's kind of been our cell phone, right? Scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But if that is my release, if that is my downtime, and I am giving life to that as my release instead of Christ, that concerned me as well. Because how much time am I pouring into, the Lord? And this is not to, you know, it may be convicting for some people, and it's not to bash you by any means because I am on that side of it. But if I am dedicating what is winding me down, being my cell phone, if I'm dedicating that time, it's almost like it becomes an idol that stands in the way of that time being spent with the Lord or my family, you know. I mean, same idea there. So it just, I'll be honest, it really hit pretty hard. I'm like, whoa, we're going to have to change some things moving into the new year and right now, not just waiting until the new year, but right now.
Right. And it's interesting that, you know, so many times things that are connected with our eyes become idols. And unfortunately, that idolatry leads to what it did in the Bible, which is essentially human trafficking, right?
Yeah.
That's where it's headed,
right?
At all sorts of levels. Even, you know, obviously television was a great source of all sorts of pornography or low-level pornography or whatever, you know, it's at some level, but it just kept escalating and escalating, and now it's gotten to the point like, oh my goodness. And so the fruit of that, as you know all too well, Whitney, is that it is, you know, got this horrible, you know, I don't know how to even say it, that the whole world has gone lust crazy and causing and such a demand on the supply that you know, there's an opportunity, obviously, for God to bring a light in a really dark place.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Robbie. You know, in the work that we do, I won't say that everything on the cell phone necessarily runs into human trafficking, but you're right. We are naive to believe that the enemy is not going to use every effort available to him to tear down mankind. You know, that's what we know. He set out to do that from the beginning, from the garden, right? This is no new tactic. And unfortunately, those devices are such a key component of that, and he's learned how to use that. You know, with what we do, and what we see on a day-to-day basis, it is very evident the spirit of lust that is on the world, truly. We lust for the things we don't have. We, and our phones make that even more difficult, right? Whether it be viewing and scrolling things and seeing what other people have that we don't, it begins to plant seeds, and seeds that, again, aim at that lust piece. I wish I could articulate all the things I've seen and watched unfold just as, being a part of this mission to rescue those that are exploited, because that exploitation, it started so long ago, and it started with simple roots and simple seeds. And I think that, again, to circle back to the technology piece, our Invictus Project, I'll bring that up really quickly. Our Invictus Project is our domestic effort. And it's what we are doing to really become not just proactive in finding these people that are hunting our children as predators, but also to be, and not reactive, but to be proactive in it as well and finding them before they get there. And it's interesting because these people that are seeking our children online, it didn't always begin there, right? When you look back at the history of what a lot of these people began to search out children for, it never started there. It started with, the common pornography that you see, it actually really starts with little things like click on an Instagram post or a TikTok that pops up or a Facebook advertisement that pops up, generated because it knows you're a male in most cases. That lovely algorithm that we hear about, right? It creates a clickbait, and then it begins this walk down this just lustful path, and you can almost see the slow transition downwards, right? That spiral downwards where it started at an image and then it moved to a different website where there are multiple images, and now there's videos, and it begins to prompt and arouse this just lustful spirit.
That's exactly what it is, right?
It is. It absolutely is, and it does. It arouses that place. And then you see it go to the extremes, I wish I could tell all the things that you see and understand, but, if we think about it, and if there are, this may be one of those moments where if you are in the car with your children and this isn't a conversation you want to have necessarily, it might be a good time to turn the radio down a little. I hate to say that, but it's true. But, there are things even within pornography, right, that there have been images played of younger looking females, right? And that has began to plant these seeds in these people that are viewing that material.
Whitney, I hate to go to a break, but we got to. So when we come back, we will continue this discussion with your comments, we hope. 866-348-7884. We'll be right back.
Truth Talk Live.
This is the Truth Network.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live, and we would be so grateful if you would call us and then enter into this discussion with your thoughts or something that you have developed within your family that helped with the problem. And the number, again, you might help a lot of us by what you've come up with, as Whitney surely has helped me by what she's talked about. So 866-348-7884, 866-348-7884. What is the solution to kids and their phones, or maybe worse, adults and their phones? And I was sitting there thinking about it, Whitney. I kept on looking at this word solution. And the solution is the blood of Christ. And in the way that what you talked about, I think, is so like open, honest discussion with our kids. But how about an open, honest discussion with God, like you guys were having over, you guys scrolling so much or whatever, you're going on in your own family. Like, man, those open, honest discussions under the blood of Christ, there you go. That's a huge solution, right?
I am so with you on that, Robbie. Yes, it is. As even before we came back into this part of this conversation, I was sitting here thinking, we have hearts that like to hide. We desire to hide by our flesh. That's our fleshly desire, is to hide. And it's so important that even in the smallest things, we invite God into them. Even the things we think are very simple or not a big deal, that we invite God into those places, because it's just like you said, that we got to take it to the Lord, and in the blood of Christ, that is where the battles are won.
Well, it's when you think about it, at the heart of it, it's intimacy, right? You're looking for intimacy if you're caught up in all that stuff, and you're desperate for that. Well, Jesus is standing there with his arms wide open. He's looking for intimacy too, and it's but the idea is so beautiful, that the idea of what you talked about is we want to hide because we feel naked.
Yeah.
I was ashamed because I was naked, so I hid, right? And so it's through his blood that is the ultimate cover, and we can get that. So once we lose some of that shame, we can actually talk to each other honestly about the things that we struggle with. But also, one of the honest discussions we have is Lantern Rescue is out there fighting on the front lines of the absolute horrible fruit that all this has created.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity as the lights of Christ, especially coming into 2024, because you guys have a big push coming on in this war that's being fought, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. And I'm really excited about this. The Invictus Project is a project that Lantern has partnered with the Randolph County Sheriff's Department right here in North Carolina. So this is as at home as it gets, and also with a couple of other agencies to really combat these crimes against children. And so what that looks like is what we call CSAM, Child Sexual Abuse Exploitation Material, which is really child pornography, if you will. So we are working really hard to combat that. And the reason, I'm just going to give you a couple of numbers really quickly because they will give you the reason why. Last year, there were 18,000 tips to come through North Carolina saying, hey, and what that means as a tip is a flagged image or video that depicts a child being exploited sexually. Okay. 18,000 came across North Carolina last year. This year, by the end of this year, we will have hit 27,000 tips.
Wow.
That's a lot of flowing material of children being abused. There's got to be something done, and
those are kids in our state, right?
Yes, that is North Carolina, just North Carolina numbers.
And so if you're listening in Ohio today, or you're listening in Virginia, and I know we got listeners in South Carolina, guess what? It's everywhere. It's unbelievable, and that it can't be any closer than that. And this is kids, little kids.
It is. Yeah, these are our children, and we got to do something different. There was an operation that took place here in Randolph County in August of this year that the Sheriff's Department and we were able to be a part of, along with 17 other law enforcement agencies. And it was Operation Child Predator. And these men were, they thought that they were being solicited by a minor. These men traveled to Randolph County to abuse what they believed to be an autistic child.
Oh my gosh.
They were willing to come here and abuse that child. That is, we can't accept that. We cannot accept that. If we are not going to take a stand and protect our children, no one will. And so that has been the heart behind what we are creating with the Invictus Project. We are creating a lab here, a forensic lab here in North Carolina that, in Randolph County specifically, that is partnered with 3 other sheriff's departments, as well as SBI, ICAC, just some other agencies that work in this arena, to be able to combat those tips so that when they come in, we are able to act quickly, move quickly, but we're also working to be proactive. So we're working to really, this isn't maybe the nicest way to put it, but it's how I feel. We're hunting those who hunt our children,
Right. And so Unfortunately, we don't have just a ton of time. I'll make sure you get it to our listeners how they can join that fight.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you would head to lanternrescue.org, you can find some information there. And, our social media is chock full of really incredible videos that the leader of our Invictus Project have put out that really share and showcase what this project is and how they can help. I will say we have a $250,000 push or need to be able to get this thing up and running by January, late January, early February at the latest is our hope. But $250,000 is a commitment, and we need people to step up and step into that commitment, to be totally honest, Robbie. And my heart desires that it would be our own community that surrounds this and sees the need for us to step up in this way and comes in to fill that gap. So if someone is listening and their heart is cultivated to protect our children in that way, and they're financially capable, they can reach out to us at lanternrescue.org, or they are welcome to send me an email at whitney@lanternrescue.org, WHITNEY @lanternrescue.org. And I'm happy to help talk them through that and see how they can help. It's end of year, so there's some people that need some tax write-offs. If this is what you want to sow into, I can't imagine many other things that would be as impactful for our upcoming generation and children in the community than this. So.
Right, and all these law enforcement that are desperate for tools, right? They want to fight it, but what this project is doing is providing the tools to which, they get results and they get persecuted, because the idea is to take the people that are actually, the distributors and all that stuff out of the equation. And by doing that, you help some, and you're not just rescuing one kid, you're rescuing a bunch. And,
right.
And of course, everybody's not able to give financially, but everybody, if God has put it on your heart, you can meet with him there in your heart and have that discussion like, God, please do something. Please help Lantern Rescue raise this money. Like, Lord, we are so grateful that you hear those voices, those screams of the children that nobody hears, that have been hidden away by all the darkness. And Lord, we're so grateful that you are rising up an army, even law enforcement here, that the hope that I've seen breathed into them, and you have seen it too, right, Whitney? Because you're close to some of those people.
Yeah, and it's just to put it in perspective, if there are 27,000 cases flowing through North Carolina, that is 108 cases on each investigator. It has to be a very specific and qualified person to do the investigations on these cases because of the sensitivity of the matter. And so they are overwhelmed, Robbie. If you want to add something to the prayer list, pray for our law enforcement, because imagine all of the day-to-day items, and then you tack on the visual abuse of children, to see that and have to work so hard to get to 108 cases, that's an overload per person to accomplish in a year's time. That gives less than 3 days a case if we're talking about them working 365 days a year. And that's not even doable. So we need that prayer and surrounding, just surrounding our office.
Right. That what you said is so, when you talk to these folks and they talk about having to look at all those images all day long, what that does to your soul, I can't even imagine.
Yes.
And so, wow, yes, they need our prayers. They desperately, and in so many different ways. Again, God raises them up to be a protector, and then, boy, they're coming up against it. So I'm so grateful for Lantern Rescue, for Whitney, what you guys are doing, and again, you guys listening today, right? That God is touching you. And I like that line that you guys have that William Wilberforce said. Can you say it for us, Whitney?
Yes, the shirt on or the quote on the back of our shirt.
Yes.
That once we've seen it, we can't look away, right? We can no longer look away.
Right. And I don't want to be the one who saw the need and didn't do nothing, right? Or is that what something along those lines?
See people and do nothing. That's not. None of us want to find ourselves in that spot of knowing and being aware of the evil at hand, and then to sit and do nothing about it. I think is something that resides strongly with us.
Right. And so again, share this information with your friends, right? That they can go to Land and Rescue, find all these resources on how to talk to their kids, how to have these honest conversations. You know, this is helpful on all sorts of levels, and it's all there at landandrescue.org. Thank you again, Whitney. So much fun.
Yeah, thanks.
We will talk to you soon. You guys have a great evening. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Truth Talk Live.
Another program powered by the Truth Network.